Hi gang! So I debated just putting this up in IGTV, but I thought that I would do a live in case there are questions because you guys have so many questions when it comes to low heart rate training. So I wanted to touch on a few of the questions that I have gotten lately, and if you have more around low heart rate, I'm happy to answer them, but I thought this would just be so much easier than 8,000 stories. So, basics of low heart rate training. If you're totally new to it, I talk a ton about doing low heart rate, partially because I have found it's one of the easiest ways to get a lot of folks actually doing their runs easy enough. So we often fall into this horrible spot of like, easy runs are still too hard. Thanks, Katie. And then you don't have enough energy to either be running more mileage, or you're getting hurt, or you're not doing your hard days hard enough. So that's why I do low heart rate. If you have more questions about what it is, I can go into that. But for everyone who already knows, I wanted to answer some of the things. So lately I've talked about being able to do speed work and maintain low heart rate, or running some faster miles in the middle of a long run and still maintaining low heart rate. And I know that sounds entirely confusing. So a couple of things that I have done. One is that when I decided I wanted to increase my total mileage, instead of running right up to that max for my low heart rate, I actually was running consistently 5 beats below. So for me at my age, that meant I was running up to 137 for all the time. So all of my easy runs, everything, I was maxing out at 137. So that actually meant I had 5 more beats that I could go before I would hit my max heart rate. But keeping it lower while I was building up to that 50-mile week meant that I wasn't feeling fatigued. I knew I wasn't overdoing it. I wasn't getting injured. So that 5 beats is what is making the difference for me. So like last week, I was able to do an 8-mile run where I ended up with 4 of those miles at marathon pace, while still staying below that max low heart rate. So I was doing those as 1-mile repeats. But because I had that 5 beats to play with, now all of a sudden I can actually push my pace a little bit more. And so at the moment, I am still kind of in that 137, letting myself creep up to 142 when I'm doing those longer runs. So now when I'm building up to that 20-mile run, because I was keeping my heart rate down for all those weeks ahead of time, as it slowly creeps up, the longer and longer and longer you run, I was still staying under my max heart rate while running. So I have to walk occasionally on hills still, partially because I'm at 5,000 feet or I'm running up at 9,000 feet. So when I was up the other day at 9,000 feet, I had to walk a lot more because my heart rate was just higher. When I was training at sea level in Orlando, I rarely had to walk. And that was after I was doing low heart rate for a while. And so I could do 9-minute miles, 8-minute miles, and stay at low heart rate. Honestly, at 5,500 and higher, my heart rate is just a little bit higher. Also, I've gotten older, so my max is a little lower. So yes, I still have to walk portions on some of the ups if I want to keep my heart rate down. But otherwise, on most of my long runs, like I said, because I started playing with that 5 beats below, I started giving myself great wiggle room. And now that I'm starting to add back in speed, I'm actually able to push things a little harder without going over. Or on the days that I want to go over, I'm actually having to push myself a little bit harder. So I thought that was kind of a little tip that might be useful to a lot of you. I know already many of you who are trying the low heart rate are super frustrated with needing to run walk. And so the idea of taking 5 beats off makes you crazy. But I can tell you, like, it really does get better. Okay, so there's a couple different questions here. Heart rate zones are very different than low heart rate training. So I have articles about both on the website. So if you go to the website and search heart rate, you can get all about the heart rate zones and you'll see the chart. If you search low heart rate, you'll find all the details on it. So here's the main difference. With low heart rate, it is basically a scientific formula that Phil Mahafitone went through, did a ton of research, came up with, and it is 180 minus your age. So that becomes literally the max heart rate that you are training at for 80% of your runs. And so that is teaching you how to run easy. And for a lot of people, all of a sudden they have to walk when they start doing that. And it's because you've often been doing your easy runs where your heart rate is at like 160, 165. That is not an easy run. Your body is telling you exactly how hard it's working, and 160 to 165 is not an easy run. So sometimes it's because we get so caught up in what our watch is saying that we're like, oh, well, an easy run for me is a 9-minute. And so you think you have to hit 9 minutes on every easy run. Honestly, some days for me, an easy run is 11 minutes. Some days it's 9 minutes, but my body is telling me how hard it's working. So a lot of you do not want to trust your body for some reason, but it really is telling you how hard it's working. So that is the very, very basic, of low heart rate. Now, the reason we're doing that, like I said, is one, we're learning how to actually run easy because 80% of your miles should be easy and 20% are hard. That is even what elite runners do. So this is not like a weird thing. It's what we do. So one, we're learning how to run easy. Two, on those easy runs, you're actually teaching your body how to burn more fat for fuel. So fantastic for weight loss. It also means that you don't have to take in so many carbs and gels because your body isn't going to bonk. So as you start running longer and longer, you're less worried about that bonk because you're not going to run into that. It means that you recover faster. It generally means for most people they end up sleeping better because their body just isn't so taxed all the time. Now, when you first switch to low heart rate training, if you have been letting your heart rate kind of fly all over the place, it could take a couple months. Like your body is basically resetting, relaxing, like letting it know it doesn't have to be in that fight or flight kind of mode. So it's not like a overnight turnaround. And I know we get really caught up in, what our watch says. So one of the things I talk about to the runners in my group is kind of knowing that your easy pace doesn't mean that's your race pace. So Ulid Kipchoge can go out and run sub 5-minute miles for a marathon, but he might start an easy run at a 9-minute pace. So I do a lot of runs around a 10-minute pace. I can run an 8-minute pace for a half marathon. I can run sub 7 for a 5K at altitude. So don't think that your easy pace means that is now your race pace. It means that you are helping your body not be so overwhelmed and taxed and overloaded. Like I said, we talk a ton about this in the coaching group that I have. If you want info on that, you can always direct message me. Okay. So that's low heart rate. Heart rate zones play on this idea, but are a little more complex. So you kind of generally hear of the 5 zones. And sort of this zone 2 is kind of what you would consider low heart rate. So it's trying to keep things easy. And then you start getting into sort of 3 is kind of a tempo run. 4 is like a 5K hard effort, and 5 is usually that like sprint that you can't hold very long. I don't know very many people who train well using the zones because it's a lot of information and you need to actually go get a test done to make sure you are correctly in the zones, honestly. So that's often called a Vo2 Max Test, which you've probably heard of. So the Vo2 Max that your watch likes to show you, I hate to burst everyone's bubble, it ain't accurate. It pulls in a lot of factors like your weight, how much you've been running, your pace, all kinds of things. Mine will tell me I'm an elite athlete all the time, which would be amazing, but I'm not. So don't get so caught up on the Vo2 Max that your watch is telling you. You can kind of use it when it's telling you a little that maybe you've pushed way too far outside your zone, but don't freak out about these numbers. So that Vo2 Max test is where you get on a treadmill, they put that mask on you. It's very uncomfortable. You have to run to the point of feeling like you want to vomit because they are literally trying to find your max heart rate. And then from there, calculating your zones as they're watching things happen throughout. So someone mentioned earlier, what if you know that like your max heart rate trends high? One, I would say, have you actually had that test done and you really, really know it, or you just think like, man, my heart rate's higher. So if you've actually had it and you know that your heart rate trends higher, then you could go a little bit higher on that low heart rate training because your max is higher. But a lot of folks I've noticed for some reason really think that their like all out effort is way, way higher than it is. Probably because when you start doing low heart rate training, it's frustrating to walk. But that's where a lot of folks start. Run walk also, which I have talked about in the past, is a phenomenal method for becoming a better runner and for building endurance because it is less taxing on your body. So there is no like, oh, you're less of a runner because you are walking sometimes. You are building a stronger body. Okay. One other question. Yes. Okay. Do you trust the Apple Watch Garmin wrist heart rate? Oh boy, this is a tricky one. Okay. So wrist-based heart rate in general is not as accurate as wearing a chest strap. I love my Garmin Phoenix. That watch is so beautiful, but the reason that you guys have seen me wearing this Polar Vantage pretty much all the time for the last few months is that the heart rate on this dominates. It has been so much more accurate than any Garmin watch. I have a lot of friends with Apple watches and they get all kinds of weird little spikes. Most of the folks that I coach also are wearing Garmin right now and they at times have weird little spikes. So I don't know what it is. Sometimes there were other Garmin watches I had in the past that seemed to just be fine. But this last one, like I would be running downhill and it would tell me my heart rate was 170. Super frustrating because then I don't know what to do with myself when I hit the flat ground. So the Polar Vantage V, and that's because they actually have more sensors and some different updated technology. That's why it's more accurate. So in general, wrist-based heart rate, not as accurate as a chest strap, and that's because it has to read through your skin, and so especially when it's cold outside and you have less blood flow because it's all going into your core to keep you warm, the numbers are usually off then. Again, I didn't have as much of that problem with this. A lot of times in the winter, I'll make sure I have a heavy sleeve and like a glove covering it to see if that helps, and then I'll just kind of peek at it. I've been doing this long enough that I pretty much know how it feels at different heart rates. So I know it's a bummer, but chest straps are $20 at the most. They're just uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie. I don't like them. And then I saw one other question. Yes, your heart rate is extremely affected by weather. So the reason that, say, 45 degrees Fahrenheit is the optimal marathon temperature is because the body is able to readily cool itself, but it's not so cold that your body is really working hard to keep itself warm. Whereas in the summer, when you're hot, your heart rate starts going up because your body is working harder. When you add in humidity, your heart rate goes up even more because you're sweating, but there's so much moisture in the air that it's not actually leaving your skin, right? And it's not leaving your clothes, like they're soaked. And so the result of that is your body is not cooling itself, and so your heart rate is higher. So yes, heart rate is much harder in the summer. So I can tell you, however, that I did this in Miami, I did it in Orlando, and that's actually where I ended up setting my race PRs using low heart rate. So It is possible. Lots and lots of coaches will tell you that we train through the summer for fall PRs. And that's whether you're using low heart rate or not. And it's because it is harder in the summer. And that's why you have to slow down so your body is not overtaxed. And then come the fall and you get those cooler temperatures and all of a sudden it just feels like you're kind of in a groove and holy cow, your legs are really ready to pick up and go. So know that summer paces for everyone universally are usually slower because it is harder. Caffeine, yes, depending on how it interacts for you, can definitely make your heart rate go up. It's why I don't use very much because I'm super sensitive to it. So I'll be like, all right, I'm going to take some pre-workout, and then I start my run and my heart rate is jacked up. And so I am kind of stuck. So yes, those can also happen. Yes, my goal is to save this, and I can put it up in the IGTV area so you guys can watch it later. Okay, I wasn't going to touch on anything but low heart rate, but empty stomach. Yes. So I have a post on fasted running, and if you're only doing a couple of miles, there's no issue with going out fasted. The big thing is that I don't want people to sort of fall into the trap of thinking like I have to run fasted to lose weight. We've kind of seen that's just not really accurate. So fasted running, totally fine when you're doing under 45, 50 minutes and you're not doing an intense hard workout with intervals and things like that. When you start to get over that, we really want you to have a little bit of something in your system. When you're doing low heart rate training, that means you can have some nut butter before you walk out the door, because again, your body is kind of focused on that fat. And so I actually don't want a carbo load before I walk out the door because I don't want my body relying on carbs. But in all cases, what we really want you to focus on is when you finish your run, getting in a high quality, nutrient dense meal. So if you're doing a couple of miles, again, even a snack after, but thinking about nutrients. So thinking about what is going to help my body right now to repair so that I can go and do my next workout feeling good. And so it's not just carbs, as much as we love our carbohydrates, especially for runners who are doing long distance, we really have to take the time to take in some protein after those workouts. It's part of the reason that you can see runners get what we used to call sort of skinny fat. And it's basically that as distance runners, either not taking in enough protein or not taking in enough calories in general, it starts to use your muscle as energy. And so if it's using your muscles for energy, then you might be losing weight, but you're losing muscle. And so that leads to injuries, but it also, for folks who are kind of focused on weight loss, like you're probably not actually heading towards the goal that you think. So that's where I try to get people to not use the scale as like your definitive of how things are going, but really focusing on how your body feels. And so just thinking about that post-run as fueling so that the next workout feels good. It's really easy to deserve the donut or whatever, and we can absolutely have those things, that's fine. But know that maybe that donut is not making you better for your next run. Okay, cool. I think those were all the questions that I saw come in, and I hope that helped in terms of talking about low heart rate and a little bit more on heart rate zones. In my book, do I talk about fueling? Yes, some, but I'm also not a dietitian, so I try not to go too crazy into that. I talk about, yes, kind of the fasted idea, when we want you to eat, and thinking about on those longer runs, what kind of fuel to take in. But I don't talk about larger dietitian issues. Ooh, interesting. Yes, so I weight train 2 to 3 times a week. So certainly you should be doing weight training. I think people get confused with the low heart rate, that maybe they can't do weight training because they're used to doing maybe more HIIT style training. But I certainly do all of my weight training and keep my heart rate down, and I can do heavier weights. I'm just not doing high intensity, so I'm not doing mountain climbers and all that stuff. I'm pretty much saving my energy for my runs. So I'm just focused on just strength. But yes, 100% do your strength training. Do your hips, do your glutes, do your core all the time. So if your fast runs are 13 minutes, so here's what I would say. I am a big fan of trying the low heart rate, where you basically get yourself, maybe initially you start off almost like power walking. Find hills. So a lot of hills at the beginning. And especially if like you're kind of saying like, I know probably I'm going to end up walking. So hills. And then after you've done, say, 3 or 4 weeks where maybe it is just a lot of walking, but a lot of hills, so that you can get as close to that max without actually running, then go find somewhere super flat, hopefully on a morning that's maybe a little cooler since it's summer. And you should surprise yourself with being able to run a little bit farther before you hit that max, and just letting yourself do that run walk and keep building. It's really easy to just kind of think everything is getting slower, but what you're doing is building a strong foundation. So find a route that you can replicate easily. Do it on day 1. Do it on like day 1 of each month or each training month, and keep checking your paces, and it should consistently be getting faster. If it's not, that's where I always say you have to go back and ask yourself, am I sleeping enough? Am I super stressed about other things in life? Am I eating well? Because the truth is, if we're not sleeping enough, we know that that is our number 1 recovery tool. Incredible studies have shown that people who simply add a half hour to an hour to their sleep, who were getting maybe 6 or 7 hours, their performance goes through the roof. So gotta sleep enough, gotta control your overall stress. Those things just have such a huge impact on your heart rate. Yes, so honestly, like, here's my thought. You have nothing to lose by trying it. You're just gonna build a stronger body. So I would start with, like I said, go hit the power walk, hit hills, and then go back after 3 or 4 weeks, do that run of 30-30, and see if you aren't now kind of on that flat, keeping your heart rate down. Then start adding in some more hills to those runs, then go find that flat again and see like 30-30, is the pace any different, or can you actually start to bump it up to 1 and 1? So yeah, I would play with that a little bit. All right, gang, that was some great questions. Like I said, if you have questions in general, we do have our online coaching group, which is over in Facebook. And so we're always over there helping the folks that we coach. I am happy to provide you information on that. We have our base group that's just $10 a month. So an easy way to always have access to a coach as you're going through training. Otherwise, I will get this up over on IGTV for anybody who missed the beginning, and talk to you guys later.